Chris Carter, and they call him Nick Wright.
Pay up. Pay up.
Oh, my God.
Pay up.
I'm so sorry.
Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
I have...
Get that right back.
Why? What's wrong?
No, CC owes me some money. Thank you. $100.
$100 for
Yep.
what?
You didn't have a pen. He bet you would. I bet you wouldn't. CC's faith in you has cost him $100.
You bet $100 that I wouldn't remember my pen?
Well, Jenna.
100?
I mean, how many times since we reconnected, haven't I been trying to tell you about the show? No one has more faith in you than me.
He bet on you, and so now the $100 I lost betting against you.
There's an easy way to solve this. I could just get a computer out here, and I wouldn't need this pen.
Then you'd leave the computer, and you have to be, hey, guys, computer. Anyway, 30 seconds of the show. Anyone got a computer?
That'd cost me more money.
Thank you. Appreciate
Just
that.
FYI, I really actually forgot the pen this morning.
Yeah,
there was no.
You do every morning.
Because I carry so much stuff around.
I won
with me.
$100. Yeah.
This will not happen again, America. I will. This is going to get. I'm right here. Here we go.
We have a staff,
here we go, Matt Patricia.
We have a staff of 12.
Matt
11 of them
Patricia.
work for Jenna. I guess we got to have the whole staff.
Okay.
We need a pin man.
Pin guy.
Let's start
everybody.
the show now that you're $100 richer.
Yes, let's do it.
Well, what an NFL offseason it's been so far. Storyline after yet another storyline. Jerry Jones making news this morning with his assessment on how far apart his team is from the Eagles, his division rivals, and the defending Super Bowl champs. Cowboys finished 9-7 and missed the playoffs last season. Eagles finished 13-3 and missed nothing last season. Yet Jerry Jones says there isn't that big of a gap between the two teams. What do you think, Cece? How big of a gap is there between the Eagles and the Cowboys coming off what you saw last season and where they're heading this season?
I don't know what Jerry's looking at, but if we could trade rosters, there's no way that the owner, a friend of yours there in Philadelphia, would trade his roster for Jerry's roster there in Dallas. What has Dallas done since the Eagles were crowned Super Bowl champs to bring them closer, since the gap's not far away, Jerry? I mean, what have they done to get closer? I mean, Philadelphia, to me, is the team that, based on what they've done this offseason, they're the team that hadn't won. They're trying to win. They're trying to get to the mountaintop. They're not acting. Howie Roseman, their general manager, executive of the year in the NFL, in my book and a lot of other books, he's not thinking that they've won. He's thinking, man, how can I get this roster better? And that's what they've been constantly doing since they won Super Bowl 52. So, Jerry, I don't know what Jerry's looking at. They have salary cap restrictions, couldn't have a lot of movement in this free agency. They haven't gotten better since last year's team. Like, unless there's something going on in Dallas that we don't know about, that Dak has looked amazing in the offseason workouts. They've talked about talking to Dez about his role and potential salary reduction. That hadn't happened yet. He's signed a couple 2 and 3 receivers as far as that's their role. There are 2 and a 3. So I see a tremendous gap between the Dallas Cowboys and the Philadelphia Eagles and some other teams in the NFC.
Yeah, really.
Right, and the NFL free agency in 2018 is not like Major League Baseball free agency was in 2018, where a lot of really good players are still available a month into free agency. Even if they do get Dez to take a salary reduction, what are you doing with that money? Like, it's not as if there's, like, these great players that, when Dez takes a $6 million pay cut, we'll go get that. I mean, I just did a back-of-the-napkin thing here. The only position group that I think you hands down would rather have what Dallas has than what Philly has is running back. And that's because of Ezekiel Elliott. Like, I think Zeke is such a special player, even though RGIII and what they've done in Philadelphia at that position, I respect it. But Zeke's a special player. I can't even say I would hands down rather have the Cowboys' offensive line. And here's why. We saw one injury on the Cowboys' offensive line when Tyron Smith is out. All of a sudden, the entire offensive line plays worse. Jason Peters went out. The Eagles were fine. Like, also, I like
The Eagles have, like, 2 left tackles.
Right. I like Jason Kelsey at center. I like Brandon Brooks at guard. I love Lane Johnson at right tackle. And so even if you want to say, well, still the Cowboys have the better offensive line, but everything else, quarterback Philly, wide receivers Philly, tight end, backup quarterback Philly, tight end, no question Philly, defensive line, by a wide margin, Philly. Linebackers relatively close, but given Sean Lee's health concerns, Philly. Defensive backs, especially since they added Darryl Worley, Philly. Like, how about this? Coaching and schematics, Philly.
And it's not even like Dallas didn't do anything. The Eagles did do things. The Eagles came off a Super Bowl and shored up their team, actually went out and kept working and tried to add pieces to their team when Dallas really hasn't, and the pool is obviously dwindling.
Right. If there's some question marks, you've been like, okay, what has happened? Okay, let's go to Philadelphia. Full disclosure, let's go Frank Wright. He left to be the head coach. Filippo left, the quarterback coach. He left to be the offensive coordinator in Minnesota. There have some... But I think those adjustments are easier compared to Dallas. Dallas made wholesale changes on their coaching staff, but basically having the same personnel. So they're telling the coaching staff, we're giving you the same personnel. We want you to get better results out of that. Also, add Mike Wallace to the receiving corps. You know, I think the receiving corps, I think Mike Wallace is a better receiver than Torrey Smith. So I think their receiving corps has a chance to be a lot better.
The D-line additions. How many players that Philly added would have been the best player Dallas added this offseason? Think about it like that. Philly's coming off the Super Bowl, the 13 wins. They were already well ahead of Dallas. Mike Wallace would have been Dallas's best free agent acquisition. Michael Bennett would have been Dallas's best free agent acquisition.
Yes.
I believe, I know you traded for Michael Bennett. I get that. Haloti Ngata would have been in the argument for Dallas's best offseason acquisition. I mentioned Darryl Worley earlier. Like, when Dallas's big star free agent they bring in is Allen Hurns. Like, and I like Allen Hurns as a player, actually. I think he's going to be better than he was in Jacksonville, but that gives you an idea.
Yeah, and don't forget the signing of Chris Long for one more year. Look at the veteran leadership, the championship experience, the wealth of knowledge that they have. I mean, what's Ngata playing for at this point? Championships. I mean, everybody else in Philadelphia, there seems to be one common goal. It's amazing how you see the respect level. When people start talking about you in the off season, you know, that's out of respect. So it's nice. I'm for the people in Philadelphia that Dallas in the offseason, they will continue to be talking about them.
It's hard to say, well, the Eagles are going to repeat. They have what they had plus more. But so put that aside. Does it feel like another 9-7 season for the Cowboys? I know you have Zeke back now for those 6 games you lost him, but is that, looking at this roster, is that what it feels like to you?
Listen, I think it is. If you were to tell me they're either going 9-7 or 13-3, I think they're closer to the 9-7 team than a 13-3 team. But I think the point that you both made early on is Dallas. I respect the idea that Dallas is concerned with Philly, much like the Rockets early in the year. Daryl Morey, what did he say? We're obsessed with Golden State. Like, you put a target on the back of the best team, the champion.
But Daryl Morey also had the resources to go out. Yeah, I'm obsessed, but I'm also getting better.
Go out and do something about it.
Yes.
But when you realize, like, there's 5 teams in the NFC right now that I believe are clearly in a better position than Dallas. Philly, Minnesota, the Saints, the Rams, and I'm going to include Green Bay. Because once you get Aaron Rodgers back, like, we've seen what they do. And then, here's the group Dallas is in to me, with Carolina, with Atlanta, maybe San Francisco, but so throw San Francisco out. Carolina, Atlanta, Dallas. I listed 5 teams to me that are clearly ahead of them in the hierarchy, and then they're amongst those 3 teams right there. And we know, listen, I know we can't do this projection. One of those teams is going to be awful. There's going to be a team, maybe the Bears or somebody, all of a sudden is going to be great. We didn't see coming. But Dallas is in that a little slightly above the middle of the pack in the NFC. There's only 16 teams. I just told you 8 of them. Like, so Philly is right now the cream of the crop, but there's other teams between Dallas and Philly.
And those other teams, there's really not a book of how you're going to stop them. Minnesota, like, if you were facing their offense, you'd be like, man, I don't know what they're going to do. You know, they got the running back coming back. They got the wide receiver, Kirk Cousins. They can throw the ball. They're not going to be as conservative as they were. They got Green Bay. Like, how you stop Aaron Rodgers? Like, that's a mystery that no team has figured out. How you going to stop the Rams?
Yeah.
I know how to stop Dallas. Stop Zeke. So the league has a book on Dallas now. I thought after the 13-3 season, I told you, Nick, they'll come back down. They'll come back down about 3 games. They'll win about 10 games. They didn't get to that last year. I think they're about a 10-win season. So that's the kind of team that they have. Now, can they add a couple things? Either a good draft pick strategically. Can they pick up another veteran as we get closer to the mini camps and closer to training camp? Those things. This Dallas team is not a finished product. Some of these other teams, and I just believe when you have a book on someone, until they start throwing the ball and being effective throwing the ball, we know how to stop Dallas and beat Dallas. Those other teams, we don't know that.
Because it's not just about adding to this Cowboys team. You want Dak to have a big third year. You want Zeke to have a similar year that he had last year. So there are a lot of questions.
One thing to Dallas's credit, it's hard to play in Dallas. They haven't had a whole bunch of distractions. They haven't had the noise around the team that they've had maybe the last year, year and a half. So that right there might be worth something. That's worth watching. There's no noise. There's no bad news out of Dallas. So that right there, I'm sure, is refreshing for the players.
What are you guys doing at 10:24 this morning? How about at 10:42?
10:42, I'll be watching Tiger. At 10:24, I will be 18 minutes away from watching Tiger.
That was the original question.
Exactly.
I wanted to know who is going to be 18 minutes away from watching Tiger Woods.
You're going to be watching with us, right?
Of course, obviously. Coming up, what does Tiger Woods have to do to be successful on day one of the Masters? It's day one of the Masters, by the way. Next on First and Spurs.
Tiger.
New topic now. Tiger Woods tees off at 10:42 this morning because it's golf and punctuality is everything. Woods will hit Augusta National seeking to win his 5th Masters and his first major since 2008. A lot's happened since 2008 as Tiger has attempted multiple versions of this comeback story. However, this one could be the last as he heads into round 1 of the Masters this morning as confident as ever. Cece, what would you consider a success for Tiger today on day 1?
Well, I know you guys talk about me. You kind of make fun about my weather, all right? The weather in Augusta is going to be very nice today, all right? It's going to be a little chillier this morning. Tiger, I think, is the 12th group off. All the groups tee off of number 1, so in succession they go off. So it's probably going to be tougher to score later in the day when the wind kicks up. But if Tiger could shoot, and I know this through walking, I've walked a bunch of rounds with Tiger's family, Tiger's mom, Tiger's late dad, who was on the course, Tiger's agent. And one thing that they always tell me is Tiger gets very, very nervous at the beginning of tournaments. The first hole, the first 9 holes. So he's not the exuding confidence like people think. He's like a lot of normal people in these situations. And it takes him some time to calm down. If he's able to shoot under par, because this is not a tournament that you want to try to come back from. Tiger has done better when he's been in the lead. Now, he's played a great month of golf. So I believe he can shoot under par at the Masters. I believe 69. Par is 72. You should know as a sports fan, this is a big boys course, though. You have to hit the ball. You have to hit your driver off the tee. And if you start seeing Tiger Woods lay back, if he starts hitting 2 irons off the tee, 3 wood off the tee, watch out because we want him to be aggressive. I believe he shoots 69, which is 3 under. I also believe on the first day, typically someone is going to shoot 67, 5 under. So you don't want to have to be chasing 7, 8 strokes, but it's important to be under par the first day and watch the first 9 holes. I believe that will be telling as far as Tiger's nerves and where his game is.
All right, so I want to get back to why it's particularly important at the Masters to be able to hit your driver off the tee in a moment. But about today's round specifically, this is something one of the newest members of our staff, Dave, who played some golf and brought this up in the morning meeting. I couldn't believe it. Tiger's played 20 rounds at the Masters. I'm sorry, 20 Masters tournaments. Day 1, he has only shot under 70 once. Only one time in those 20 Masters tournaments has he been under 70. His 4 wins, he shot 70, 70, 70, and then 74, actually, in his most recent Masters win back in 2005. So now the par is 72, so he's been 2 under most tournaments, 2 over the 1. Where he has made his work is Friday and Saturday. All of those wins, he's had either a 65 or a 66. One of those days, a couple of them, he had them both days. That is when he has really made up his ground.
What does that say? That he does come out a little cold when he starts?
It says exactly what Cece's saying. It says that it's tough for him to score on those opening 9 holes. The first Masters he ever won, his first round, he went 40 on the front 9.
Yes, 4 over par.
30 on the back 9.
Yes.
6 under par. So, if you see Tiger, as long as he is around, Cece said 69, I'm not going to argue with him. I would have said 70. Right there, there is a path to victory for him, even if you do see a guy go out and shoot a 66. You do see
Even
a guy
if he has to play catch-up because the guy goes 500.
Put up a number.
And the reason why, we haven't talked about it, why is there so much anticipation for the 2018 Masters? It's not only that Tiger Woods in the last month has come back and he's healthy, he's put himself in contention. It's not only that Phil Mickelson has won after a drought of several years. It's not that Bubba Watson has won. It's not that Dustin Johnson is back healthy, number one, that he's won. It's not that Roy McIlroy, he can finish the Grand Slam. It's not that Jordan Spieth, he's dominated the Masters but only won one of them. It's all of these things in one happening. So that's why I think it's very important for Tiger to shoot a number like that, because out of these superstar players that we've seen, a lot of these players have not played with Tiger at a major under the gun. And I believe, just Tiger, you don't want to chase these guys down. You want to stay with them the whole way.
And I know you're going to talk about his hitting and what he needs to do, but there's also, we've seen a difference in Tiger and his approach to these tournaments. At the beginning of them, over the course of the last couple that he's played, he's changed from, I just want to be healthy and have fun, to, I want to win. I want to win the Masters, and that's very important.
The difference, I felt like the last few weeks, when he finished second at Valspar and then was in contention until the final few holes of the tournament after, he was playing to contend. He was playing to be in the conversation, and he is now saying, I am playing to win. Now, he was playing to win come Sunday of each of those tournaments,
yes,
but he was at a deficit because he had been conservative early on in those tournaments. All right, your point about not hitting 2-iron or even 3-wood off the tee and hitting your driver, because he will be able to reach greens in regulation even if he hits his 2-iron off the tee. But because of the way, you were talking about this before the show,
yes,
because of the way the greens are set up at Augusta, you want to be approaching with a 7, 8, 9 iron instead of a 4, 5, 6. Why?
Right. Now, Tiger, when he came back, and he might be able to get away with the 3-wood because he can hit it, especially if he can hit it from right to left. He can hit it almost as far as his driver. But he had to play conservative because he didn't have confidence in the 3-wood or the driver, so he had to play back. We saw that when he was trying to win the tournament, he laid back off the tee and had a longer approach shot, the longest approach shot.
72nd hole at the Valspar.
Yeah, so that approach will not work. He has to play not reckless, but he's got to play aggressive golf. And even if his driver's not there, he's got to hit it and try to work through it, because these greens are not meant. Now, the golf clubs, a 2-iron is straight up and down. So the loft on it, there's not a lot of loft. So as you go to it 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, there's more loft on the club. These greens are such undulation, hills, and mounds on the green also that you have to fly the ball high. So if you hit irons 2, 3, 4, and 5, they're not meant to be able to land soft and get close to the pin. If you hit 7, 8, 9, you can put the loft on it, the spin on it, that you can control it once it gets on the green and get it closer to the hole. So that is, when you're watching him, watch the Tiger hitting off the tee. It's going to show you how he's feeling and if he can be aggressive.
You want it, Masters in particular, I know it's going to sound basic because you're like, oh, every golf shot everywhere you want to do this. But on your approach shot to the green, you want it as high in the air and to land as close to the pin as possible, as opposed to running it up, as opposed to dealing with, okay, I'll hit more of a flat shot and deal with it that way because of the way CC described the greens as. That's why being able to hit your 9-iron, the way you can hit your 9-iron is if you use your driver. So that's why, again, we've talked all week about this. How can Tiger win? Be accurate with your driver. That's how he can win this tournament.
All right, day one, 10:42 a.m. Say that a couple times so you actually remember it. Coming up, talk some football. RGIII is back in the NFL, but can he still play football after a year away from the league? That's next on First Things First. Hey, time for some stories to start your morning. Deshaun Watson had a great rookie season that was cut short with a torn ACL. His head coach, Bill O'Brien, saw enough in Watson's 6 starts, says the Texans will overhaul the offense to suit Watson's skill set. Nick, good move to build completely around a second-year quarterback?
This second-year quarterback, absolutely. And, man, I hope it's successful, because I feel like there's been a lot of talented quarterbacks, potentially talented quarterbacks, that we didn't get to see their full potential because for a long time we were trying to square peg round hole these guys. And if you see success with an offense geared around his specific skill sets, sustained success, then what does that mean for, well, a guy coming out in this year's draft like Lamar Jackson? What does it mean for other athletic quarterbacks that also can throw the ball really well? I hope this works out.
So, Nick, what it's going to look like, it's going to look like what we saw in those 6 games. they will emphasize a lot of deep passing. Even though Deshaun Watson, as a collegiate player, he's not effective throwing the ball deep. In the NFL, and especially with the type of wide receivers he has. Also, watch them to copycat a little bit what they saw with Nick Foles in the NFC Championship and in the Super Bowl. RPO, so he will have a read. It will be getting it out of his hand quick, just so he can continue to develop that rhythm. I expect big things from him in year number 2.
I agree.
All right, sticking with football, Des Bryant's destiny in Dallas is still up in the air. Cowboys CEO Stephen Jones recently said that Des and the team have yet to meet to discuss his future. The two sides are in a standstill over contract negotiations, and the team hasn't ruled out drafting a wide receiver. Cece, what does Dez's future in Dallas look like? Because it seems to change from day to day.
Well, I mean, I know this type of meeting. No one wants to have a meeting talking about your money. No one wants that meeting.
Unless you call the meeting. Unless it's the person getting paid calls the meeting. Sir, boss, I'd like to come talk about the money. That usually means you're asking for a raise.
Yeah, call me first before you do that, because I'll just tell you that's probably not going to end well. Nick, okay, I'm just going to give you, maybe since you look up to me just a little bit. All right? Like,
okay.
Dez's future's like Nick. It's short. Like, don't loan him no money. No, Dez got to concentrate on trying to get better. Whatever the money situation is, I would take a salary reduction. I believe he's worth more to the Cowboys. Tell them to give you some incentives. If I get a 1,000-yard season, which I haven't had, if I get 1,100, give me that back. If I get 1,200, if I get 10 touchdowns, give me that money back. I believe it should be worked out. Dez is more valuable for the Cowboys.
What I will say is this. The longer the Cowboys wait to have this uncomfortable conversation, the more, in my eyes, the leverage shifts towards Dez, because the more the wide receiver market dries up more.
Yep.
Is certainly if you wait until after the draft and you see if the Cowboys have or haven't taken a wide receiver. So, I mean, at some point, Dez's people will be able to say, what are you going to do with the money you're taking from him? Just put it in the owner's pocket? Like, the players are going to be gone. So if they want to have this conversation, they should have it sooner than later.
Jenna, you know, in relationships, you're better off just bringing it up as soon as possible. Ain't no need in waiting and putting it off, because it's inevitable. We got to have this conversation, Jenna.
I know. We just did, didn't we?
We got to talk.
I hate that. We need to talk. That's the worst. Moving on to baseball now. Giancarlo Stanton followed up his 5-strikeout game with a big day yesterday. He hit his 3rd home run of the season, a 2-run shot. Nick, he's now on pace for 81
Good job,
this
Jenna.
year. Thank you. Every day, baby. Every
good
day.
job.
I'm just saying a couple of math things, and now I'm moving on.
Nice.
Following his lead, Aaron Judge and Gary Sanchez each went deep for 2-run homers of their own. Yanks beat Tampa Bay 7-2. Cece, how dangerous is this Yankees lineup, especially that middle meat?
We know the lineup is dangerous, but how healthy can they stay? The bottom of the lineup, you know they're going to have to save them at some point. But also, how consistent can they be? We know it's powerful, but how consistent can they be? And when they hit some type of slump, how bad is that slump? But I'm a Yankees fan. I was one of the ones booing when he striked out 5 times. Yesterday he gets up the bat, he launches one to left center. That's great. But then he struck out 3 more times. So then I'm back. Like,
listen, you got people got to know what they got with Giancarlo Stanton. He is pretty typically a 3-result guy. Like, strikeout, home run, walk. Like, you know, this is who he is. He's not a guy that's going to hit a lot of, opposite field doubles. Like, this is who they added. Knowing who he was, we're excited to add him and pay him all the money they had signed with the Miami Marlins to. So you know who he is. It's the people behind him. Like, when he's the only bat in your lineup, as he was in Miami except for Yelich, like, then all of a sudden, if he has an 0-for-4 night, you're screwed. When you have Judge and Sanchez and then Didi,
and
who, what did he have? Had 8 RBI the other day. Like, you're going to be fine. This is the best lineup in baseball. The Astros might be the best team in baseball because of the pitching staff. This is the best lineup in baseball.
Love it. All right, moving on to hoops. The 1-seed Raptors beat the 2-seed Celtics 96-78. They kind of demolished them. Toronto stretched their lead in the East to 3 games with 4 to play. Nick, can the Raptors be a serious threat to Cavaliers in the East?
They can't be that, but I will give them credit, because last night was an important game. Like, I know Boston's shorthanded. Boston been beating folks shorthanded. They almost beat Milwaukee the day before. They beat a Utah team that was on a great run when they were shorthanded. So Toronto on a back-to-back after another devastating loss when Kyle Lowry had played his worst game of the year to win this game and win it. I mean, they only scored 14 points in the first quarter. They're down 20-14 after the first quarter. Then they played really well on both ends of the court afterwards. This basically locks up the 1 seed for them, so that's important. They avoid the Cavs until round 3. That's important, so good win for them.
Man, they had to win this game. And Boston being shorthanded the way they were in a 2-night span, they couldn't afford to lose this game. You know, so Boston right now, to me, it's Manny Mannix yesterday talking about, oh, Cleveland better watch out for Boston. He must have jinxed them because this was not a good night for me. You could look on the court and you've been like, okay, who is that for Boston? Okay, now who is that for Boston? Okay, I don't know that player either. Yeah. I mean, they have some G League players out there playing.
What I will say is Boston right now is the 2 seed. I think they're hoping Miami falls to the 7. I think they'd much rather play Miami as the 7 than Washington as the 7.
Yes.
So just watch that as the last week of the season unfolds.
All right, lastly here, rumors are circulating that Lonzo Ball could be shut down for the season with a lingering knee injury, even though there's like a week left.
Yep.
Ball is averaging 10 points, 7 assists, 7 boards in his rookie year. Chris Carter, how do you evaluate Lonzo Ball's first season?
Well, you have to evaluate. You have to be very positive. I mean, you're looking at the rookie class and how all of them, for the most part, have struggled in some aspect. We've had 2 in Simmons, Donovan Mitchell. Those 2 are the highlight of this class. But if you tell me, okay, as a rookie, he's going to get 10, 7, and 7, like, there's some things in there that you can't teach. Like, you can't teach a kid to be unselfish. You can't teach a kid to be a floor leader. You can't make a guy rebound. We didn't know what kind of defender he'd been. He's been a positive as a defender. That's been a plus for him. So it's been a very good year. The Lakers, they can see moving forward, wow, this is the guy that we thought he was going to be. Maybe he doesn't have to necessarily change his jump shot, but he's got to be able to get in the gym to be able to be more consistent and to be able to get it off quicker. He's got to develop some more offensive weapons, finishing at the rim, some type of intermediate game or a floater game there in the lane. But I think that the Lakers, their coaching staff has been positive in the things that they've said. And I know that Magic Johnson is positive with his overall attitude and how he's dealt with some adversity. He believes that's going to make him stronger going forward.
There's a few things that are overwhelmingly positive for Lonzo. One is, you mentioned the 10, 7, and 7. Like, only 4 rookies ever have put up the stat line Lonzo put up their rookie year. It's Oscar, it's Magic, it's Ben Simmons, it's Lonzo Ball. Now, no one is saying he's going to be Oscar or Magic. I don't think he's going to be Ben Simmons either. But the filling of the box score, the being better than average at the non-scoring parts of the game as a rookie, that's very difficult. We see a guy like De'Aaron Fox, who I think is going to be an excellent scorer in this league one day. He may never, at his peak, be as good of a passer and rebounder as Lonzo is right now.
Yes.
So, like, that's a big positive for him. I'm going to say another thing that's a positive that has kind of been underrated the last month and a half, and I think a positive for him moving into year 2. The dad doesn't seem as relevant anymore. Like, when's the last time, I know on this show we try not to talk about LeVar, but any of these shows, like the dad doesn't move the needle as much to where you almost feel forced to bring him into a Lonzo discussion. So why am I bringing him up now? The Lakers are going to be going after major free agents this offseason. And if the level of noise from the father had stayed consistent from day 1 to now we're in game 79, I think that could turn off some free agents. That has not been the case. And so those things work in his favor, I believe.
I know the numbers are great, and I know his line is great, and it puts him up there with elite rookies that have gone on to have incredible careers. So why does it feel like he hasn't lived up to the hype? Like, why are we even having this conversation? How do you evaluate his first?
Because this is what we do. We build kids up to tear them down. Like, there was no way when Magic Johnson drafted him and said he will be in the rafters one day as one of the Lakers' great, that he was going to, there's no way, given the volume of information and noise that his family made, that he was going to be able to live up to that.
They all did him a disservice.
Well, that's here nor there, all right? We're evaluating the player, and the kid is a good kid. The Lakers organization, they like him. We can't control the hype, but when you look at it, what happens to rookies? You mentioned De'Aaron Fox. He was a great prospect coming in. What kind of rookie year did he have?
It's not like D. Fox was taking 20 picks after him, just a few picks later. Like, we talked about Malik Monk.
Yes.
Another top 10
in
pick.
Charlotte.
We hadn't talked about Malik Monk once all year until we showed that highlight yesterday.
He was in the G League.
Exactly. So the fair comparison for Lonzo coming into the league was not Magic. It was always Jason Kidd. And so let's just, if he is done with his rookie year, show him side by side. Their rookie years. Jason Kidd was a slightly better scorer. They were near equivalent passers, and Lonzo's a slightly better rebounder. Like, if he continues on the Jason Kidd trajectory, a guy who was one of the 8 greatest point guards in the history of the league.
Yeah.
Everyone will say that. It was a wildly successful career. Like, Lonzo did. He didn't exceed expectations, but I don't think he failed to meet realistic expectations either. What we didn't see coming was Donovan Mitchell and then Ben Simmons, the redshirt rookie, having these monster seasons along with Jason Tatum.
All right, let's move on to the NFL. Were you just thinking to yourself, you know, I haven't heard a lot about, in the last year, RG3. Well, the former rookie phenom quarterback is back on a team. Ravens are signing Robert Griffin III to a 1-year deal. Griffin wasn't on an NFL roster in 2017, played only 5 games in 2016. Both tremendous signs for a great 2018. CC, what do you think? Can he still be a productive quarterback?
I think he should be an adequate backup quarterback. How good he's going to be in the passing game, we just haven't seen him grow. We haven't seen his mechanics grow. He still has a fairly big windup. Now, when you start to become a mature quarterback, we forget that he ran a 4.3 because he can't utilize his speed since he got hurt his rookie season. So in trying to develop being a pocket passer, he hasn't had the type of accuracy that you want. But he is more than good enough as an athlete, as a thrower, to be a backup in this league. Like, he should have been in the league last year. With all the quarterbacks, this is how you continue to develop quarterbacks. You don't develop them by having them on the street. You develop them by having them on teams. RG3 is good enough. He was a starting quarterback in this league. I don't know why these guys, sometimes the league just gives up on them and they don't help cultivate them. I mean, I talk about him all the time. I mean, McCown for the Jets, I mean, Mike, at no point was he a starter. No point was he as good as RG3. But he can be a backup. But RG3 can't be a backup. So for me, it's just kind of puzzling. You know, you get better by getting reps. And him being out of football, I don't believe it helped him. But he should have been in the league. I don't know why he was out of the league.
Here, I think a few things led to him being out of the league. And this is, to me, a little bit of a puzzling move by Baltimore. And here's why. One is, if you just do a Google search, RG3 teammates, what you will find Google News is stories from 2014, 2015, and 2016 about different either anonymous or on the record or former teammates talking about how in the locker room, people don't love this guy. That is not typically what you want from your backup quarterback. Additionally, when you saw when he was a starter week 1 in Cleveland, I went back and watched how he hurt his shoulder because I had alluded to it yesterday. They're down 12. There's 3 minutes left in a football game in the 4th quarter. It's 3rd and 14. He's 6 yards short of the first down line. And he's on the out-of-bounds marker. And instead of just stepping out of bounds, he initiates contact. Coming off a major injury, he messes up his shoulder and misses 11 weeks. The other thing you want from your backup quarterback typically is the ability to stay healthy. So for those reasons, I understand why he is not the first person you call. Now, I can't justify Josh Johnson having 30 jobs over the last decade. I can't justify what you're talking about with Josh McCown. I understand that. But I do get why RG3, especially now that he's a year removed from football. I mean, there's the play. Like, I don't know what you're doing on this play. And then he stays in for the 4th and 3, and then he shows
that play
how
doesn't make you ineligible to play. No. And even some of the things you said about him, the reason why RG3 wasn't embraced in the locker room because he's a little bit different. His personality's a little bit different, but he's not a bad guy. He's a family guy. Now, his thoughts and everything might differ from some other guys in that locker room, but, man, you need to have some different thoughts from guys in that locker room. I know guys in that locker room, and a bunch of them are different. But we accept their differences, but sometimes we have a quarterback that he's a little bit different. We don't want to accept that. We accept all these other guys, they got major differences. There's a whole bunch of stuff that we don't have in common. But sometimes as the quarterback, we put too many eyeballs on them, and we just make too many excuses of why they shouldn't be there. They're just like anyone else on the team. If a guy's a backup defensive tackle, so what? He's a little bit weird. We accept him. But as a quarterback, I don't know why we do that to quarterbacks.
But isn't it a little bit more of an issue, just the fact that he tends to get hurt very, very often, and they're big injuries that keep him out for extended periods of time?
Okay, you telling me there's 100 quarterbacks in the league better than RG3?
No,
I don't.
That's not what I'm saying at all.
These other guys haven't played. All right?
Correct.
I mean, part of playing the game is guys are going to get hurt. But that doesn't eliminate you from being on a team.
The injury stuff is why, in my eyes, why he's not in a discussion for being a starter on a bad team. But the reason why for this particular team, I don't love the signing. I'm not saying RG3 doesn't deserve to be on a roster in the NFL. What I am saying is I think Baltimore needs to be preparing for life post Joe Flacco.
And this
seems like it's an emergency quarterback to win a couple games if something happens to Flacco.
Do you think he could still play?
I mean, I don't think if he were the starter for my team, I would feel terribly about it because I don't think he can stay healthy. But Chris's point, and it's the point I bring up with Cap all the time, I think Cap's good enough to be a starter in this league. But even if he's not, you cannot convince me there's 90 guys better than him. I understand why you can't say there's 90 guys better than RG3. I think for this team in particular, I don't understand the fit. I don't understand him as a backup for a quarterback that seems to be closer to the end than to the beginning.
I believe they're going to draft a quarterback that would be the replacement for Flacco compared to going in free agency. Right now, you need arms to be able to throw. You need a guy that's been in the league, that has an understanding of the league. And we give all these other quarterbacks plenty of years to, man, just sit on the bench and come watch film, and they're going to get better. But RG3, he's not afforded that opportunity. And I believe that he's talented enough, all right? That's why you're coaching. You coach the kids to teach them how to play. That's what pro football is about. These guys aren't finished products. They got a bunch of bums that are quarterbacks. Don't nobody say nothing about them. You know the reason why they haven't gotten hurt? Because they can't play, and they haven't gotten in the game.
So let me ask you a question real quick, because we never talked about it, because it just wasn't a big topic. So were you bothered last year that he was out, that no one would give him a shot? That he
No, I wasn't bothered because I probably thought it was football related. It wasn't anything else off the field. I know Baltimore was one of the destinations that Kaepernick could have ended up. So no, it had nothing to do with that.
All right. We'll take a break. Coming up, let's talk some basketball. Can the Spurs repair the relationship with Kawhi? Is that even possible? Next on First Things First. Welcome back to First Things First. Cris is here.
These things are staged. They're not natural.
I got to tell you.
He's staging the handshakes now.
Well, I almost shook his hand, but then I knew I was going to do it when the show started. I didn't want to do two handshakes in 4
It's okay.
seconds.
It's okay. I'm still buzzing from the 78 points Boston put up.
Oh, yeah.
That
The
was a
old
big one.
Mannix curse.
That was awesome.
Man, Mannix, I think, has
This
a
is twice
side
this
deal.
year, right?
That was awesome.
You got a side deal with Hotels.com, just getting people to book finals tickets in different cities.
I try to
Just getting a kickback.
I can move the needle a little bit. It's
There you go. I like it.
That's great. All right, let's talk about that a little bit. But after missing all but 9 games this season and with only 3 games left to play, there's still plenty of time for Kawhi to return to the lineup, said nobody ever. You know the story. Medically cleared, yes. Played since January, no. He's drawn criticism from his coach and multiple veteran players. But according to Spurs guard Danny Green, who joined Cris Broussard on his podcast, the team has no issue with Kawhi.
The only person that really knows is Kawhi Leonard. I guess he had a setback. He had a couple of setbacks, and then he was still in pain. We had communication. We sat down. Some of us talked to him individually. We texted him. He's still very much a part of our team.
So you're in touch with him?
We're all in touch with him. We all text him. We're all in touch with him. He's still very much a part of our group and our team. We still have his back, whatever his decision is, what he's doing. From our team and from their perspective and standpoint, I can speak for most of them. There's no odds. Okay. You know, we're not at odds with him.
So many different reports about so many different things and how both sides are really approaching this. Do you buy that the Spurs can still work it out with Kawhi Leonard at this point with the regular season all but done?
Oh, look, that's relevant commentary from Danny Green, because one thing I hear from other players who are not associated with the Spurs is they wonder if inside that locker room, the Spurs feel like Kawhi quit on him. Like, you know, they're in a playoff push right now, and Kawhi's not willing to push through it on the court. They don't know, but that's the question that they ask. Now, is it reconcilable? Let's say this first. I've seen worse. LeBron James and ownership in Cleveland reconciled after a bitter breakup years ago. I've seen worse. That being said, other teams right now, you saw Brian Windhorst last week reported that teams were kind of preparing offers. I've talked to multiple teams that are doing that exact same thing. And right now, teams are kind of using their relationships they have with people inside the Spurs organization to kind of probe a little bit, to ask, Is this real? Are you going to put him on the block? Now, nothing definitive has come out of this yet, so it makes you think that maybe there is a sense in the Spurs organization that they're going to try to make something work. But the clock is ticking on this. The best chance for San Antonio to make a deal that gets them something real back in return is going to be this offseason. So if this thing is going to come to a head, it's going to happen July, August.
Right. I mean, that's a critical point because Kawhi is a player option after this year. Like if you trade for him mid-season, next year, if they try to make it work, it doesn't work, they trade for him mid-season, you're getting him for 30 games and the playoffs, and then he can go anywhere, right? So that is why if it were to happen, it would happen this offseason. The reason that I think that Kawhi has played his last game as a Spur and that it's not reconcilable is very simple. What did Greg Popovich say to LaMarcus Aldridge? What he said to him was, when LaMarcus Aldridge wanted a trade, he said very simply, all right, find me what did he say? Go get me Anthony Davis?
Yep.
It was essentially, find me a player better than you, find me good equal value, and I'll trade you. There wasn't value for LaMarcus Aldridge at the time. He was coming off a bad season. People didn't see this year coming from him. You weren't going to get equal value. You can get, Kawhi would be the best player available via trade since when? Better player than Harden at what we thought of Harden at the time. Like when Dwight Howard was at his peak and it seemed like he was available via trade. Like you will have teams essentially say, listen, here's the roster, here's our future picks. You build the package and we'll see if we can make it work. So the Spurs would be able to get, you never get full equal value for a superstar, but they would be able to get as close to it as you can come. And that's why I think it is that it won't be reconciled, because the Spurs don't have to reconcile it. They recognize and they know, man, if we just are stubborn and just stand pat, then he can walk in a year. Mm-hmm. Now he'd be forfeiting some money, a lot of money, because the Spurs can offer him that supermax extension. But Kawhi has the leverage in this situation, and from everything I'm hearing and everything I'm seeing, he doesn't seem to want to be in San Antonio after this year.
No, I thought a couple things that Danny Green said in the podcast there with Cris Broussard was, one thing he said was, most of the players, he said most of them, he didn't say all the players, he said most of the players are comfortable with Kawhi and what he's gone through. And the other thing that I thought he said was really important was Kawhi had a couple setbacks. Now, we haven't heard that. But, I mean, I know that because I know the people who handle Kawhi. So I'd be shocked if he played in San Antonio. Kawhi don't want to be in San Antonio anymore. And all the murmuring stuff that came out of the locker room, it's not helping their situation. So when you have a player like Aldridge, he didn't have the ability to be able to go out, and on the market at that point, he wasn't that valuable. For right now, for Kawhi, though, Kawhi is valuable. And I know that there are other players in the league that are intrigued about, wow, if Kawhi would go somewhere, what that domino piece, how it would affect the rest. I believe it would affect LeBron. I believe LeBron going to Los Angeles, him and Kawhi potentially being in Los Angeles is a real possibility. And if LeBron decided he want to take less money, LeBron, Kawhi, and Paul George playing with the Lakers. Now, that's what I believe he's going to leave San Antonio, and I believe that the Lakers are a potential destination for him.
Chris Mannix, why do you think it is that Kawhi Leonard doesn't want to be in San Antonio anymore? It can't just be the way the team handled his quad injury. Is there more to it? What are we missing?
There could be more to it. He's a very difficult nut to crack. Like he's not a very outspoken guy. He has a very tight inner circle. I'd almost compare him in some ways to Russell Westbrook in that regard. So you don't know. What you do know is that the handling of this injury issue has been a significant deal. It's been a far bigger one than I believe that most people around the league believe coming in. Look, as recently as 2 weeks ago, it was coming out of the San Antonio organization. He was going to suit up and play in that New Orleans game on a Thursday night. Now, he's gone. He's back in New York, or at least he was a couple of days ago, getting another opinion on that injured leg. So I think that's a big issue. And like we've talked about, the clock is real here. The opportunity to deal a player. And let's be honest, Kawhi Leonard, when healthy, and I think people sometimes have forgotten over the last year.
He was top 3 MVP.
He's a top 5 player in the NBA.
Yes.
That's a top 5 player just hitting the prime of his career that you can deal. So if you can get, you bring up the Lakers, but if you can get Boston to deal Jason Tatum and a pick, that's a real asset. And I mean a top 10 pick, respectively, for Kawhi Leonard.
Well, the thing about the pick is interesting because what people have to recognize is we have seen this amazing player development from San Antonio. But the last blue chipper they got was Tim Duncan. That's what happens when you win 50 straight games for 18 years. It's what happens when you make the playoffs for 20 straight years. Since Pop's been there, they've had 2 blue chippers, guys that we thought as blue chippers coming out of college. David Robinson, who obviously was there before Popovich was there, but Popovich helped develop him, and Tim Duncan. Both of those players reached 100% of their potential. You then have Kawhi Leonard, who coming out of San Diego State was not considered a blue chipper. The development helped turn him into it, and people had misgraded him in the draft. What would the Spurs do with Jason Tatum? What would they do with a guy that was considered a blue chipper, has proven to be that, and then an additional first-round pick? What would they get? What would we think of Brandon Ingram, who right now people are like, I get the scoring, I see it, but like what we've seen the Spurs turn the last pick of the draft, Manu Ginobili, into a potential Hall of Famer. Tony Parker, I think, was 29th pick of the draft, in full potential. DeJounte Murray, they get the most out of every player that gets there. So the idea of getting a blue chip prospect, which they haven't had in 20 years, has to be attractive.
And let's be clear, too. I mean, look, San Antonio's first preference here, from everything I'm hearing, is to find a way to make this work. There's skepticism that they can actually do it, but that's their first preference here. If that can't be done, though, this is almost an opportunity to kind of put some punctuation on the last 20 years. We've been wondering, when is the Spurs dynasty kind of going to end? Manu Ginobili might be gone end of the year. Tony Parker, who knows? This is their chance to kind of reboot the whole thing. I believe, last night's 8-point clunker notwithstanding, that Jason Tatum is a franchise player. You can build around him. You give the San Antonio Spurs, R.C. Buford, that staff, a top 10 pick, you could have 2 franchise players within 12 months to build around for the future. So I think you kind of have to look at that, if you're San Antonio, as an opportunity to reboot the whole thing.
All right, CC, you had brought up LeBron. We're going to talk about where LeBron might end up. Chris, stick around. That and more.
Boston. We just say LeBron to Boston. Let's just do that.
Were you sure?
Back here in First Things First with Chris Mannix. Chris, it's Thursday. That means it's time to guess where LeBron could end up next season. Cue the music. He's still playing at an MVP level in year 15. Now we've got players around the league chiming in on where he'll be in 2016. Spurs guard Danny Green, boy, he's been saying a lot lately, Danny Green. It says LeBron would fit in perfectly in San Antonio, while Blazers guard C.J. McCollum said that LeBron is heading to Philly, and that it's a bigger possibility, that is, than most people think. Chris, what say you? Which team is the best fit for LeBron next season?
So if you're talking about fit, I agree with C.J. McCollum, because the Philadelphia 76ers, you plug LeBron James as a small forward into that lineup right now, and they are the favorite next season to win a championship, because Ben Simmons is going to improve, Joel Embiid's going to improve. We assume Markelle Fultz will be able to make a shot at some point from
Markelle Fultz has looked good.
He took his first three-pointer, and that didn't look good.
Okay, no, his jump shot, but he's looked like a competent player otherwise.
He's got a great ability to probe the paint. Anyway, they keep getting better. But more importantly for LeBron, Philadelphia allows you to age gracefully, because in Philadelphia, you can step into that team and be the alpha right away. But as he hits his mid to late 30s, and as those young guys start to improve, you can get Embiid taking over, Ben Simmons taking over. All these guys can become the alphas of that team, while LeBron kind of becomes second, third option as in his late 30s. Now, my one question would be, how in the hell do you afford that if you're Philadelphia? That's like 4 potential max contract guys or close to it that you have on the roster.
You don't, when you say afford it, they would, salary cap wise, they could sign him next year because they let it go. They have the space, but you mean eventually
down the line
you're paying a bunch of guys $40 million. It's a good problem.
Yeah.
What you talk about age gracefully. This is why when KD's decision was coming up, I was the one person saying, anyone think about Minnesota? Like, could he go to Minnesota? And the reason was, and at the time I thought Wiggins was better than he's ended up being, but I said, KD gets there, he's instantly the best player, and then in 5 years, he's the second best player, and Karl Anthony Towns is the best player. And then in 7 years, he's the third. You know what I mean? That is the exact same progression.
Of course, you play for Tibbs, and you'd be playing like 38 minutes a game.
It's a great point. That maybe for a lot of reasons, KD not going to Minnesota probably the right decision for him. But I like that idea of it, and that's the case against Houston. The question, if we're talking about Houston versus Philly, is do you trust Embiid's health or Chris Paul's age more? Because Chris Paul, while he's been in the league a year less than LeBron. He's older than LeBron. He's also an undersized point guard, and we know those guys don't typically age too gracefully. So I've been saying CC was the first person I heard on television mention Philly seriously. It got me thinking about it a lot, and so that is now where I think is the best fit for him, even better than Houston because of the age and gracefully thing. But the team that I haven't mentioned, that you didn't mention, but was the team that seemed to get this whole thing started a year ago, is the Los Angeles Lakers, and that's a team, CC, you've been talking about a lot lately in regards to LeBron.
Yeah, and also I think you have to look east and west. I think that when guys make decisions like this, because LeBron has dominated the East, I think that he'll pick a team or two, and I believe that will be Philadelphia and Cleveland if he decides to stay in the East. If he decides to go west, I believe that at the top of that, Houston and Los Angeles. And I just believe the overall pool of Los Angeles, Magic Johnson, and the potential of the players that he can bring there, that is real. And I just know that Houston is interested in LeBron and having his services. It's just a matter of what he wants to do. I love the fact that you're talking about aging gracefully. And also I believe that there's a certain part of LeBron that's different than KD. KD wants a laid-back atmosphere. He just wants to talk about basketball. I believe that LeBron, the mentoring part, this next part of his career, I believe is going to be very important. Now, he wants to play with good players, but his ability to be able to give that basketball knowledge to other good young players, I believe that's more attractive than maybe potentially playing with the Kawhi or someone like Paul George, playing with Joel Embiid, playing with Simmons, and the overall interaction that LeBron would have in the role in their life. I believe that's important to LeBron. I believe he'll look at something like that, Jenna, as he decides to make this next decision.
Do you think conference or what side of the country matters at all to LeBron? Would he rather be the best player in a, we'll call it a weakened conference, or does he want to go out and be competitive in the next couple of years?
LeBron makes no secret of his desire for a great legacy. Like, he's very open about that these days. Now, what's the one way he can burnish that legacy? It's to win championships. He's probably, best case scenario, he probably adds another L to his finals resume this year. I mean, look, let's be real. He's got, like,
no, I'm with you.
Like, come on, even you can't think
and that doesn't help his resume.
State. That doesn't help his
So
resume.
you have the best case scenario is the same as the worst case scenario. Because they've already made the finals, so the best and worst case scenario is the same. You a loss in the finals. Got it. Go ahead.
Sorry, your point. We'll do that tomorrow.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. But if he's looking to win championships, long-term conference does matter. And that's why Philadelphia makes more sense. Look, he's going to have to contend with Boston because the Celtics, even if they maintain the status quo, they're going to have a very good young team that's going to be solid over the next few years. But Philadelphia, Simmons, imagine Simmons with a jump shot. Embiid, I actually believe Embiid's health problems are behind him. Last year, it was the meniscus issue. The foot has not been a problem in like 2 years. So
that was the major one.
Yeah, I'm good
because
with
those feet
that.
are tricky, especially with 7-footers.
Well, listen, I want to talk about the legacy thing just for a second because I know for a fact that there is a team that will recruit LeBron. They are not yet because that'd be tampering, and of course they wouldn't.
Yeah,
but that will recruit LeBron, that is out west, that is going to make the legacy pitch this way. Fair or not, people hold those finals losses against you. If you go out west, you might not make every NBA Finals. But when you do, if and when you do make the finals, you will be the heavy favorite. Like, going out west might prevent some more finals losses from piling up as opposed to staying out east. Now, I don't buy into that logic because I think making the NBA Finals is a better accomplishment than losing in the second round. But I'm a man on an island there. CC, you talk about the finals record. Our pal Skip talks about the finals record. Everyone.
Because the greatest players in the world, they can have such a dominant presence on a basketball. It's not baseball. It's not football. Like, they can dominate the game.
Yeah, but how many of those finals losses, and I don't want to get too far down the rabbit hole, but how many of those finals losses do you really hold against him? Like, I think one, that first year in Miami, they should have beaten Dallas. These other series, they were just outgunned. Beginning in 2007, they were completely outgunned by better teams. I don't think LeBron, I agree with you, in basketball.
You know the reason why I keep track of them? It's because they keep them scoring, they keep them track of them.
Yeah, look, they are. But, here's something for LeBron in the East. You stay in the Eastern Conference. When was the last time? You have to go back to, like, the Russell Celtics when a guy could make the finals in, like, 10, 11 consecutive years. You make the finals this year in Cleveland. You go over to Philadelphia. You might be back in the finals again next year. You just keep those runs going. That's an accomplishment.
Listen,
it's not the same, but it's an accomplishment.
You got to go back to the Russell Celtics for a guy doing it 5 straight times that's not LeBron James. Just one last point real quick. If LeBron's serious about playing until he's 40, if he were to go to Houston, he then probably has to change teams again at some point if he wants to keep competing for a championship. The Lakers or the Sixers are the two places where you theoretically it would be his last.
He's going to try to get on Jordan's corner. He's going to join the Wizards.
Look, to bring it back, though, quickly to San Antonio and why I think they're in the mix here. And this was before the Kawhi stuff happened. This is all things might have changed as a result of this. But people in LeBron's orbit have often kind of told me that LeBron craves playing for a great coach.
Yes.
And he has not had that opportunity yet in his career. And Greg Popovich is the only great coach out there. Now, he's not going to play for Phil Jackson for many different reasons. Doc Rivers, not quite on that level.
No, and he's not playing
Pop's
for Brad
the guy.
Stevens.
No,
Right.
Pop's the guy. And the chance to play for Pop, I think that means something to LeBron James.
Good conversation. Cris, thanks so much, as always,
pleasure.
for joining us. Coming up, an all-pro NFL player is campaigning for Odell Beckham to join him next on First Things First. I'm Jenna Wolfe, and thank you for listening to the First Things First podcast. Make sure to subscribe and tell your friends, family, and coworkers about the podcast, which, by the way, is available on iTunes and all your favorite podcast apps. You can catch a fresh new episode every Monday through Friday on FS1, starting at 6:30 a.m. Eastern, 3:30 a.m. Pacific. So long, everyone.